Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me.
I was still wearing the same black suit from the funeral. My shirt collar was wrinkled and my shoes were dusty from the cemetery lawn. Coffee from a gas station sat half-finished in the cup holder, cold as a creek stone. I just wanted to go home, sit at our kitchen table, and pretend for 5 damn minutes that Paige might come down the stairs complaining about the drip in the sink. That was all I had in my head. 5 minutes of silence in the house we built. But the second I turned onto Sycamore Street, I saw something that froze my hands on the wheel. Before we start, tell us which city or country you're listening from. Let's see which corners of the world we've gathered from today. Thanks. And now the story. Gordon's Silverado was already backed into the driveway, tailgate down like he was unloading lumber. Behind it, Brett's white box truck idled like it had a schedule to keep. That thing had property removal written all over it, even without a logo. The front door of the house, our house, was propped open with Paige's old flower bin. I saw cardboard boxes stacked waist-high in the foyer, and Elaine, her mother, standing just inside, pointing at my tool chest like it was some broken-down appliance. My gut turned. I pulled up slow, rolled the window down, and stepped out like I didn't want to believe what I was seeing. I kept thinking maybe they were clearing something for a memorial, but no one clears out a man's closet for remembrance. Connor, Brett's college-age kid, came stumbling out onto the porch with an armful of my winter coats. Behind him, Brett hauled my dresser like he was doing me a favor. I didn't say anything at first. I just stared. Brett set the dresser down with a grunt and looked past me like I wasn't standing there. Then Gordon, slick as ever, said, "We're getting a head start. Family needs to prep the house calm. No shame, like he was on contract. He'd never once called me family." "Prep it for what?" I asked. My voice cracked. I wasn't expecting it to. "For Brett," he said. "Keeps the place in the merit line. We'll set aside your personal items." That's when it hit me. Paige hadn't even been in the ground 24 hours, and they were already carving up her life, our life, like it was theirs to divide. I told them to stop. My voice was firmer this time. Gordon didn't flinch. Elaine turned to me like I was interrupting something she'd planned for weeks. "Derek, honey," she said, "we'll be tasteful. You can come back on Friday to collect what's yours," like I was a tenant waiting for my deposit. I walked inside anyway, past Brett, past the flower bin. The smell of cardboard and furniture polish hit me like a punch. Our wedding photo was face down in a box labeled miscellaneous. Her recipe book, tossed on top of my softball glove like trash at a yard sale. I didn't even touch it. I couldn't. My hands were shaking. I stepped back out and pulled out my phone. Called Avery Holt, the estate lawyer Paige had insisted I meet 3 months ago, back when she still had strength in her voice. "They're here," I said. "They're moving things out. They've got trucks." Avery didn't ask questions, just said, "Don't confront them alone." "I'm coming." So I waited, right there on the porch. I didn't shout, I didn't threaten, I didn't even touch the box labeled "Pantry, Donate." I just watched. Watched Brett load my fishing rods like he was collecting antiques. Watched Gordon point toward the deadbolt, talking to someone on the phone like the locks were already his. Watched Connor laugh while dragging a box full of my tools across the porch. And I filmed. Every second of it. I didn't need to raise my voice. I wanted their own words to do the talking when it counted. I met Paige on a Saturday shift nobody wanted. The paper cutter jammed halfway through a rush job for some bakery I hadn't heard of, and while I was elbow deep trying to clear the rollers, she walked in, holding a box of cinnamon knots like a peace offering. Said her shop was called Hearth and Harbor, just opened down on Hargett, and if I could get her menus printed by noon, she'd keep me in muffins for life. I fixed the cutter. She got her menus, and I ate 3 cinnamon knots before lunch. Paige was 34 then, had flour on her jeans, and a voice like someone who'd been barking orders since dawn. She didn't flirt. She evaluated. You could tell from the way she looked around the press room, noting what was broken and what still ran. That was how she saw people too. What held, what cracked. She decided I held. Our first date was Chinese takeout on the loading dock. Second was her showing me the bakery after closing, still warm from the ovens. I liked that place. It smelled like ambition and butter. And we were married less than 2 years later. Her family showed their teeth early. First time I met Gordon, he looked at my calloused hands like I'd brought the wrong resume. He was the kind of guy who shook your hand while glancing at your boots. Flipped rentals for a living. Basic flips, nothing fancy. But talked like he owned Wake County. Said things like legacy asset and multi-generational equity when he meant the tiny bungalow Paige inherited from her grandmother. It was a 1920s place over by Oakwood Cemetery, painted pale yellow with a stubborn old maple out front she named Red. The porch sagged, floors creaked, and the stairs moaned like old men. Paige loved it like a second heartbeat. That house didn't cost a dime, but Gordon acted like it was a family trust. We went to dinner at the Merritts 2 months after getting engaged. Elaine, her mother, served salmon with the kind of dill sauce you only see in magazines. And halfway through, she tilted her head and asked, "Where did you say you went to college, Derek?" I said, "Didn't." Fork hit the plate like a dropped spoon. Nobody said anything for a few seconds, like my answer had knocked the air out of the room. Then Gordon cleared his throat and started in on bloodlines. Said it with the weight of a preacher. "Some things stay in the family," he told me. "Homes, land, traditions. That's how we do it." I smiled, tried to keep it easy. "We are family." He smiled back like I'd told a joke he didn't quite get. Later that night, Paige apologized for them. I told her not to. I wasn't expecting streamers and hugs, but the way Gordon looked at me, like I was a stray dog sniffing around his porch, stuck in my teeth. When we announced the engagement, he cornered me in the backyard after dinner. Came at it casual. Said he wanted to talk financial clarity. That meant prenup. Just to keep Paige's heritage intact, he said. It's not personal. "You understand," I said. "I wasn't trying to take anything." Paige was sitting beside me. She didn't say a word, just reached under the table and squeezed my knee. What I didn't know then was Gordon had loaned her $28,000 for a new double-decker oven when Hearth and Harbor started taking wholesale orders. He called it an investment, but it was paperwork light and control heavy. Told people he helped launch the venture, like he was a founding partner. That oven ran hot, but not as hot as Gordon's pride. He started calling the bakery ours in front of people. Not just family, customers, delivery guys, realtors at barbecues. Paige would smile tight and change the subject. But it pissed me off. She built that shop from scratch. I watched her mop floors after midnight just to make payroll. Gordon bought her one damn appliance and acted like he held a deed to her effort. Holidays at the Merritts were a masterclass in polite isolation. They'd stick me at the far end of the table near the kids. I was 38, talking Legos with a fourth grader. Anytime I stood to refill a drink, the room went quiet like I'd interrupted a prayer. They talked like my job was a phase, like I'd move on to something real once I grew up. I've been a pressman since I was 20. I run machines that cost more than most homes, but to them, I was just a guy who smelled like ink and carried calluses instead of cufflinks. I kept my mouth shut. For Paige. Always for Paige. She came home every day dusted in flour, hands cracked from sanitizer, and still managed to ask about my press runs. She never once made me feel like less. Not once. That woman ran 12-hour days and still remembered how I liked my coffee. But her family? They never stopped measuring. And every time they measured me, I came up short. Brett, her older brother, used to park across the lines in my driveway like the concrete was his. He'd nod at me like we were both just waiting for Paige to come to her senses. His kid, Connor, would show up anytime Gordon needed something moved. Big arms, empty head, called me boss with a smirk. The message was clear. I didn't belong. Not to them. I told myself they'd come around. Give it time. People soften, right? Looking back, I see it clearer than ever. Time didn't soften them. It sharpened them. Every year, Paige stayed married to me. They got more resentful, more certain I was just passing through. A wrong piece in the family puzzle. They believed in blood like it was law. And in North Carolina, with no kids and no will, that belief isn't just talk, it's a plan. They were planning even then. I just hadn't heard it out loud yet. It was one of those hot Carolina afternoons where even the bugs sounded tired. Gordon's sister was renewing vows with her second husband out in Apex, and the whole Merritt clan turned up like it was a royal wedding. White tent, rented chairs, mason jars with floating candles. Brett brought a Bluetooth speaker that only played Kenny Chesney. Elaine wore pearls. The lemonade had more sugar than water. Paige and I stood near the dessert table, her fussing with a cake topper she made herself, a little lighthouse with heart windows. It was her thing, symbols and small details. She cared about what things meant. I'd just stepped away to take a call from the shop. One of the new hires had reversed a layout, and a client was about to lose their mind over a missing QR code. I walked toward the side yard for reception and passed behind the garage to get back to the tent. That's when I heard them. Gordon's voice, low but clear. He was standing by the old fridge in the garage, the one they used for beer and spare casseroles. Brett leaned against the doorframe with a solo cup, nodding like this was all agreed. "When Paige goes, the bungalow comes back to us," Gordon said. Not hopeful, not emotional, just final. "That bakery's brand stays Merritt, not Lawson." I stopped dead. The gravel under my boots crunched. They didn't hear. Brett shifted. "What about him?" Gordon didn't hesitate. "He's not blood. No kids, no claim. House returns to family. That's how it's always been." Always? Like this was a written rule. Like Paige and I didn't exist in between. Then Elaine stepped in. She was inside the garage, sorting table linens and pretzels. She didn't look up when she said, "We'll change the locks quickly," just to avoid confusion. Give him a little grace period. Of course I stood there holding a paper plate of deviled eggs, ears burning, stomach hollow. They were talking about her dying, like it was a guaranteed step in a business plan. Talking about me like I was a loose end. I didn't move. Didn't interrupt. I wanted to. But I knew if I said one word, they'd just close ranks and lie. Or worse, smile like it was all misunderstood. I turned and walked back around the tent. Inside, Paige was laughing with her cousin about buttercream ratios, holding a spatula like a conductor's baton. She looked up, caught my face, and her whole expression dropped in one beat. She handed off the spatula and met me halfway across the grass without saying anything. We didn't stay for dancing. In the truck, I waited until we hit the road before saying a word. I don't like dragging out the fuse once it's lit. "I heard them," I said. "Gordon and Brett. And your mom." She didn't ask what they said. She just pulled into the Harris Teeter parking lot and stopped under one of those big pole lights like we were about to sign a treaty. I repeated it word for word, no filter, no soft landings. Her eyes didn't blink. She just sat there, hands on the steering wheel, tapping the leather with her fingers like she was counting something. "I've been putting it off," she finally said, hoping they'd soften. But I can't ignore it anymore. That was when I realized she'd known. Maybe not the exact words, but the shape of it. The slow knife her family had been twisting for years. She reached into the glove box and pulled out a manila folder with a printed email on top. "I made an appointment already. Lawyer named Avery Holt, 2 blocks from the courthouse. We go Tuesday." "You already booked it?" She nodded. "I wanted to wait until you saw it for yourself." "Now you have," I sat back, heart still buzzing. "And the bakery?" "Same lawyer," she said. "We handle all of it." I didn't thank her. She would have hated that. Instead, I just said, "All right." That night, she slept turned toward the wall. I stayed in the kitchen, lights off, fridge humming like background noise to a slow-motion train wreck. I stared at the backsplash tile she installed herself. Each one set by hand, every one a little crooked. I couldn't stop thinking about Gordon's voice, about the way he said, "When Paige goes," like it was already scheduled, like the house had never been mine, like the bakery was some merit heirloom I'd borrowed. They weren't going to fight fair. They weren't going to wait for grief to cool. They were already circling, making plans. Paige didn't talk about her death like it was around the corner. But that night, after everything, I saw the truth in the way her shoulders curled while she slept. She knew her family would treat her funeral like a start line. We didn't talk the next morning until after breakfast. Then she handed me the folder again and said, "We're not waiting." I looked through the paperwork, emails, notes, even a copy of the deed with the old name still on it. I didn't understand all of it, but I understood the urgency and the trust. "Derek," she said, "I don't want you left guessing." She wasn't scared of dying. She was scared of leaving the wrong people with too much room. And the Merritts? They were counting on that room. We parked right outside the office on Davie Street, just up the block from the courthouse. Paige didn't wear makeup that day, and I didn't shave. We walked in like we were early for a funeral, quiet, stiff, and already tired. Avery Holt wasn't what I expected. No suit vest, no Rolex, no "trust me, I'm billing you for thinking" attitude. He had on a blue Oxford shirt with a faint stain near the pocket and a calm voice like a guy who read instructions twice before assembling a grill. I liked him immediately. "Let's not overcomplicate this," he said, laying out some documents and a fan across the desk. "We're not here to chase loopholes. We're here to make sure your intentions stick." He broke it down so even I could follow. "In North Carolina," he said, tapping a page with his pen, "if someone dies without a will and without kids, it doesn't automatically all go to the spouse. Parents can claim a share, especially of real estate. And if the deed doesn't specify survivorship, it's a mess." I looked at Paige. Her mouth was tight, eyes locked on the paper. "That's what Gordon's banking on," I said. Avery nodded once. "But here's the thing. You don't have to die intestate, and you don't have to hold title in a way that invites a fight." He turned to a new form and circled a section with a calm, practiced hand. "We retitle the house as tenancy by the entirety. That means if one of you dies, the house goes to the other, automatically. No court, no probate, no confusion." We signed the deed the next week and recorded it with the county. I carried the certified copy out of the building like it was something fragile and alive. The next thing was her will, not some stack of legalese that no one understands. Avery used plain words, simple clauses. Paige left everything to me. No conditions, no loopholes, no room for interpretation. She even added a no contest clause, so anyone trying to challenge it risked losing whatever they thought they were entitled to. At the end of it, she included a handwritten letter, folded with the will. "To my family," it began. "Please leave Derek alone." This is what I wanted. I read it twice. The curve of her letters hit me harder than the message. Then came the business. Hearth and Harbor was set up as an LLC, fully in Paige's name, which Avery said gave us room to move. The operating agreement was updated to name me as manager if she passed, gave me full authority to either keep it running, sell it, or wind it down. Her wishes, in her language. We also walked down to the credit union and added a POD, payable on death, designation to the business checking account. Avery insisted on that. "No bank delays," he said. "It flows straight to you and no one can touch it." It was like armor, one piece at a time. And the Merritts? Paige wasn't done with them. She'd kept every wire receipt from Gordon's so-called investment. $28,000 even, plus $1,600 in agreed interest, all paid back over the previous year. She handed Avery a file folder with printouts, annotated by date, even included a screenshot of the old text where Gordon called the payment final. He never filed a lien, never even sent a thank you. But he sure kept acting like he still had a claim. Avery scanned everything, then said, "We'll draft a letter demanding release of any future claim, and we'll attach the receipts. If he ignores it, that's on him." That night, Paige handed me a thumb drive with every document, backed up twice. Avery had the originals in his safe. She also gave me a printed checklist of what to do if anything happened. Who to call, what forms to use, which account numbers to have handy. It was all in a folder marked "Hold Fast," with her initials sharp in the corner. She slid it across the kitchen table without saying much. I opened it, read the list. Sat there staring at the last item. "Don't let them push you out." "I can do this," I said. She nodded. "I know." Then she reached under the cabinet and pulled out a Ziploc bag. Inside it was a second letter, folded twice with her writing on the outside. "If you ever feel shaky, read this." She kissed the top of my head and said, "Put it under the coffee beans. You'll know which ones it was the fancy ones, Ethiopian roast, sealed with a clip she always forgot to use. We weren't fighting them out loud, not yet. But Paige knew how her family worked. They didn't scream or throw punches. They acted polite while they pushed you off the porch. She wanted me planted on concrete before they even reached for the railing. And it worked. As I sat at that table, with that folder in front of me, and her handwriting looking right back at me, something shifted. I didn't feel like a temp husband anymore. I didn't feel like I was waiting to get replaced. I felt like I had standing. For the first time since I heard Gordon's voice by that garage fridge, I felt like we had the upper hand. Not because of muscle, not because of threats, because we had the paper, because we followed the rules better than they did. Paige didn't want war. She wanted peace with a backbone, and I realized right then, she'd built it, one notarized signature at a time. The first time Paige mentioned her stomach aches, we were standing in the bakery's walk-in cooler. She bent over to check the produce order and winced like she'd pulled a muscle. "Too much butter tasting," she joked, rubbing her side. I laughed with her, called it stress from the new hotel contract. We both wanted it to be that, something simple, a byproduct of ambition. Looking back, we were idiots. A few weeks later, the pain didn't just come and go, it settled. She lost weight she didn't have to spare. The circles under her eyes got darker. Finally, she agreed to a scan. We sat in a small room with bad art on the walls, while a doctor we'd never met before told us pancreatic and stage 4, like they were grocery list items. He didn't blink. My ears rang. I couldn't even look at her. The drive home took forever, even without traffic. She stared out the passenger window, one hand on her stomach, the other gripping the seatbelt like it was keeping her from floating away. I kept both hands on the wheel and said nothing until she broke the silence. "Don't look at me like I'm already gone," she said, still looking out the window. "We've got things to do." That's how she handled it. Lists. By the time we got home, she already had a plan forming. She lined up Marta Quinlan, her steady-as-a-rock second-in-command at the bakery. Marta could run the ovens blindfolded and balance the books in her sleep. Paige handed her the vendor list and a set of keys the next morning. "I'm not quitting," she told Marta. "I'm delegating." Marta nodded, eyes shining but steady. The merits started showing up more often after that, not with soup or flowers, with clipboards and questions. Gordon made a point of walking through the house, tapping on window frames, talking about maintenance schedules and property tax planning. One evening while I was fixing tea, he stood by the kitchen island and asked for a set of keys to the back door in case of emergency. I set the mug down harder than I meant to. "Emergency for who?" I asked. "For the family," he said, like it was obvious. "Someone should have access if things change." Paige, sitting on the couch, didn't even look up from her notebook. "We're fine, Dad," she said. "We've got it covered." I started noticing Sierra after that. She was Paige's old high school friend who'd ended up as front-of-house manager at Hearth and Harbor. Sierra was good at charm and shortcuts. She'd always liked Gordon's attention, his compliments, his talk of future opportunities. Lately, she'd been whispering with Elaine by the register, glancing at me like I was the outsider at my own counter. One afternoon, Paige caught me watching them. "Be careful with Sierra," she said quietly. "She's loyal to whoever she thinks can write the next check." I didn't argue. I just started paying attention. A week later, I came home from a late shift and stepped onto the porch. Through the cracked window, I heard Gordon's voice low and smug, talking to Brett. They were discussing some guy named Luther, a brand consultant from Gordon's club who could take over the brand. Gordon said it like Hearth and Harbor was a racehorse he'd bred, not a bakery his daughter had built with burned hands and dawn wake-ups. I stood there for a while, fists tight, before unlocking the door and making enough noise to end their talk. They smiled like everything was normal. Brett asked about my truck's mileage. Gordon patted my shoulder. I could smell the whiskey on his breath. That night, Paige and I went over the accounts again at the kitchen table. Avery had already added me as backup signer on the business accounts, and we'd set the POS system to ping my phone on any cash pulls over 200. Sierra called it micromanaging grief when she saw the alert notices pinned on the register. I called it common sense. Paige taped lists on the fridge, one for her symptom meds, names, dosages, times, one for vendor contacts, one for muffin formulas only Marta could read. And then, at the bottom corner of the freezer door, a note in her sharp block letters, "Please don't let them turn this house into a chessboard." I read that one every morning. The merits kept circling. Gordon offered to help with paperwork. Elaine suggested we let Connor mow the lawn to keep appearances up. Brett started parking closer to the porch. They all smelled opportunity. None of them brought soup. Nights were the worst. Paige couldn't handle the stairs anymore, so she dozed on the couch between meds. I slept on the floor nearby with a spare blanket, listening to her breathing shift. The smell in the room was cinnamon and antiseptic, like the bakery had collided with a hospital. It made me want to smash something, but I stayed still. I held her hand when she reached for it in her sleep. The folder Avery had prepared sat on the mantel, fat with certified copies and backup thumb drives. I looked at it more than I looked at TV. Every page inside was a line we'd drawn in ink to hold back the tide. But sitting there in the dark, with her skin warm under my palm, and her hair falling thin across her face, the papers felt like umbrellas in a hurricane. Paige noticed me staring at the folder one night. "It's there to protect you," she whispered, "not to keep you awake." I nodded, but I didn't stop watching it. Because I could feel the merits waiting. Because I could see Sierra smiling at them from behind the counter. Because no matter how many signatures we had, paper couldn't stop disease. And disease was coming fast. We were out on the porch just after 6. Air was heavy, but not hot. Like the sky hadn't made up its mind yet. I had a hoodie on. Paige wore one of her bakery blankets across her shoulders. The soft gray one with the chocolate stains in one corner from some failed tart experiment last fall. She couldn't walk more than 2 steps without help by then, but she still made me carry her outside because she wanted to sit under the maple one last time while the leaves were still holding. "You remember the list?" she asked, her voice like paper. She didn't wait for my answer. "We're going over it again?" She had the folder on her lap, the one Avery made up, thick with tabs and not one wasted word. "If they push," she said, tapping the cover with her knuckle, "don't raise your voice. Let the documents do the talking. Don't waste energy you can't afford." I nodded. I'd heard it before. But she needed to say it again. And I needed to hear her voice just a few more times. "You don't keep the bakery out of guilt," she said, flipping to the business tab. "Sell it if that's what makes sense. Marta's the buyer if she wants it. She's earned the keys. But if she doesn't want it, you shut it down right. You wind it up. Don't hand it to Sierra. Don't hand it to Gordon. And sure as hell don't let anyone run my name like it's part of a sale tag." "Copy that," I said. She gave me a look. "Say it like you mean it." "I mean it," I said. We sat there a minute, the wind just barely moving the branches overhead. The street was quiet. Even the neighbor's dog wasn't barking for once. Paige pulled something from the little wicker drawer under the side table, a folded piece of paper, yellowed at the corners. It was a certified mail receipt. "I sent this last spring," she said. "Told Gordon in writing that the loan was fully repaid and that I expected him to release any claim. Avery drafted it. I sent it certified. He never responded." She handed it to me like it was gold. Avery's got the full record: letter, tracking info, delivery confirmation, screenshots of every wire. Don't let Gordon pretend he didn't know. Already in the safe folder and on the thumb drive, she said. I raised an eyebrow. Which thumb drive? She smiled just barely. Top shelf in the pantry. Cutty Sark tin. Behind the extra filters, I shook my head. Of course. You always said I was predictable, she whispered. I said you were precise. She gave a tired laugh and leaned her head against the back of the chair. Then she looked at me again, this time serious. You call Avery before you answer a single Merit text. Even if it sounds harmless. Especially if it sounds harmless, she said. They'll frame it like a favor. They'll call it support. Don't give them the first inch. I wanted to ask if she really thought they'd come that fast. But then I remembered Gordon already asking for the keys. Elaine's whispers at the bakery. Brett's smug glances like the place was already promised to him. Of course they'd come fast. I asked. Sierra? Paige raised one tired eyebrow. Watch the drawer. Watch the vendor credits. If she's going to steal, it'll be quiet and small. Cases of berries, delivery double bills, tips not recorded. Float herself on the slow bleed. Death brings out thrift store ethics. I leaned forward, elbows on knees. You really think she'll try it? I think if Gordon gives her a reason, she'll find a way. The sky was darkening behind the maple, that bluish gray that comes right before the streetlights blink on. I felt the chill in my spine more than the air. Paige closed the folder and rested it on her knees. Her fingers looked thinner, her nail beds pale, but the way she tapped her fingers on the manila cover, still all business. If they try the locks, she said, don't fight at midnight, fight at noon, broad daylight. Witnesses. Don't worry, I said. They won't sneak up on me. She tilted her head. They'll try. We sat there in silence after that. I didn't ask for more. I didn't tell her how much it was breaking me in half, just to hear her lay it all out like she wouldn't be here next week. She didn't want tears. She wanted action. She wanted me prepared. Eventually her head dropped to the side, resting on my shoulder. Her breathing slowed. I didn't move. When she finally drifted off, I stayed right there. Didn't carry her inside right away. I just stared at the porch rail in front of us. One patch near the bottom had chipped paint that looked like a jagged triangle. I traced it with my eyes over and over, like I could memorize every inch of the world we'd built together. I knew what was coming. I'd known since that quiet room with the doctor. But that night, sitting under the maple with her wrapped in that blanket and the folder between us like a shield, I finally felt the full weight of it. The end wasn't some abstract date anymore. It was crawling closer, slow and steady, and she wasn't scared of it. She just wanted to leave the lights on so I wouldn't trip in the dark after she was gone. The morning of the funeral, I sat on the porch for 15 minutes before getting dressed. Just sat there in my shirt sleeves, coffee going cold, watching the sun drag across the siding like it didn't care what the day was. The folder Avery gave us still sat on the mantel inside, untouched since the last night she spoke. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Every page was burned into my memory. All Souls Church was just off New Bern Avenue, brick with white trim and a sign out front that still had the Easter service message on it. Paige would have hated that. She didn't go in for the resurrection celebration type stuff. She liked plain talk, clean lines, but she picked the place herself, weeks before, said she didn't want anything too soft. Marta showed up first. She brought lemon bars in a Tupperware box, wrapped with a dish towel, like it was just another Sunday at the bakery. I hugged her longer than I planned. Her shoulders were stiff, but she didn't pull away. Brett showed up with his usual tan blazer and the expression of a man appraising square footage. He didn't say much, just nodded at me like we were business partners meeting at a site visit. Elaine had her pearls on again and that air of someone putting on grace like a coat. She walked up to me with one hand lightly on my arm and said, "Family sits in the front row, Derek." I didn't blink, didn't flinch. I just said, "Of course," and found a seat in the second. I wasn't about to argue over pew placement when I knew exactly what was waiting for them after the service. The weight of it sat in my coat pocket, a printed copy of the deed Avery filed, with the recording stamp clear as day. The service was short, like Paige asked. No long stories, no forced eulogies. Marta read one of Paige's old bakery newsletters. It was the one she wrote during the Christmas rush, full of burnt cookies and broken mixers and how love wasn't about perfection. It was about showing up anyway. That one hit me hard. After the service, people mingled by the columbarium while the church ladies cleaned up the reception. I stood near a low planter, half listening to someone from the old neighborhood talk about their HVAC unit, when Gordon appeared next to me like smoke. "We'll give you a couple days," he said, soft voice, eyes on the pavement. "Friday, we start addressing the house." He said, "addressing," like he had a clipboard in the truck. I turned slowly and looked him right in the face. "I'll be staying at Rubens tonight." He nodded once, like that was his approval to give. Like I was asking to borrow the guest room from the CEO. The arrogance of that man was almost impressive. On the drive to Rubens' place, I kept replaying what Avery told us, plain and clear. With tenancy by the entirety, the title snapped to you the second she passed. The house is yours. Period. No court needed then the will. Full inheritance to me, with a no-contest clause so strong it could shatter teeth. The business? Mine to manage, sell, or shut down. Paige's language, not Avery's. Reuben left the porch light on for me. We stayed up an hour drinking warm beer in silence. I tried to sleep on his couch, but my brain wouldn't let me. I dozed in 30-minute blocks and woke up gasping each time like I'd missed something. Around 4 a.m., I dreamed about Gordon changing the locks, woke up already reaching for my phone. That's when I saw the message. Sierra. We should meet to discuss the handoff. Bakery's in flux. I have some ideas. I stared at the screen for a minute, then muted the thread and turned the phone face down. By the time I pulled onto Sycamore the next morning, the sun was barely over the rooftops. I had a bag of Reuben's leftover casserole on the seat next to me, untouched. And there it was, Gordon's Silverado in the driveway, tailgate down again, Brett's white box truck parked like it belonged there, the front door wide open. I don't care how much paper you've got in your pocket. Nothing changes the first kick to your ribs when you see people stripping your life bare in real time. I got out of the truck slowly. My shoes hit the gravel with more weight than usual. I could already feel my jaw clenching as I walked up the sidewalk. Inside, they were busy. Boxes labeled kitchen, donate, decor, misc, tools, garage, stacked by the door like they were shipping my life to Goodwill. Elaine was standing in the kitchen pulling dishes out of cabinets like she was shopping in a consignment store. Brett passed me on the way out, carrying one of my drawers, my actual dresser drawer, balanced under one arm. Connor, all biceps and no brain, stood on the porch tossing old extension cords into a plastic bin like he was packing up college. No one looked at me. I stepped back outside and stood there on the porch, breathing through my teeth. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. Paige's voice was still in my head. "Don't fight at midnight. Fight at noon. With a witness." So I texted Avery one word. Now. Then I hit record on my phone and just stood there filming as Gordon walked across the living room, pointing toward the mantel like he was measuring for a flat screen. Elaine said something about repainting before the season changes. Brett made a joke about my recliner being too broken to donate. That's what grief looked like in the Merritt family. Curtain calls and clean slates. But me? I had documents. I had dates. I had certified receipts and a signed letter from the only Merritt that ever mattered to me. They just didn't know it yet. I stood in the doorway while Brett hauled my dresser like he'd bought it at auction. Connor had my fishing rods bundled under one arm, bumping them against the doorframe like they were scrap metal. The tip of the Fenwick graphite rod, Paige's anniversary gift, scraped the trim. I clenched my jaw so hard it clicked. Elaine was in the kitchen opening drawers like she was shopping. She didn't even glance at me when I stepped inside. I said one word, clear as glass. "Stop." She kept her hand on a measuring cup. Didn't flinch. Gordon was in the living room, arms crossed like a site manager. "We're preparing the house," he said, voice flat. "You can pick up your things after we get family settled. It's cleaner this way." My hands were fists at my sides. "This isn't your call." Gordon gave a low, breathy chuckle. "Derek, you're not blood." There it was. The final nail they always had ready. Not blood, not family, not entitled. I heard a car pull up, tires on gravel. Avery's silver sedan slid to the curb like it had a built-in compass. He stepped out calm and steady, leather folder in hand. He adjusted his cuffs and walked up the path like he'd done this before, because he had. He didn't say a word until he reached the porch, just nodded once at me. Then he looked straight at Gordon. "Mr. Merritt," Avery said, smooth as steel, "you're removing property that does not belong to you. Put it back." Right now, Brett paused mid-step with the dresser. He looked at Gordon like he wanted backup. Connor froze on the porch, holding the rods like they were part of his job description. Elaine folded her arms across her chest and shifted her weight, like this was just inconvenient, not illegal. Avery stepped inside and set the folder on the console table. He pulled out the deed first, unfolded it slowly, and tapped the county seal with his pen. This property is held as tenancy by the entirety, which means, under North Carolina law, it vested in Derek the instant Paige passed. No probate, no delay. The house is his. He pulled out the will next, placed it carefully beside the deed. This is Paige Merritt's will, signed, witnessed, and recorded. It leaves all personal property to Derek. The no contest clause here, he tapped it twice, bars any family member from receiving a single item if they challenge it. Gordon didn't blink. "This is family property," he said, like that could override actual law. Avery didn't even turn a page. "Family tradition is not law, Mr. Merritt." Then he looked at the pile of boxes by the door like a state trooper eyeing a broken taillight. I stepped forward and played the video from my phone, the one from the morning porch scene. I hit play and held it where everyone could hear. Gordon, on camera, saying, "We'll change the locks." Elaine, pointing to the pantry, saying, "Get the cookie tins too." Brett laughing about dump runs. Avery didn't smile, but I saw it register. He pulled another document from the folder. Wire receipts, notes, a copy of the certified mail receipt Paige had sent last spring. "This is the payment record for the $28,000 loan your family keeps referencing. Paige repaid it last year, principal and agreed interest. You never filed a lien. You never released the claim. But we have the proof. We also have a letter you ignored." He held up the receipt with Gordon's signature from the post office. The color drained out of Gordon's face so fast it looked like someone unplugged him. "Here's what happens next," Avery said, voice still calm. "You return everything to where you found it. You leave this property. You do not enter again without Derek's permission." His words didn't rise, didn't shake. They just landed. "If you return," he added, "we will file a police report for trespass and attempted theft. And Mr. Merritt, we will seek legal fees." By then, Caleb from next door had stepped out onto his porch with a bird feeder in hand, pretending not to listen. But he was angled just enough to hear every word. Small neighborhoods don't keep secrets, they curate them. Gordon tried one last swing. "We'll contest." Avery didn't even lift his head, just tapped the no contest clause with the end of his pen. "Then you get nothing. And this video becomes Exhibit A when we ask for sanctions." The silence after that hit harder than a slap. No one moved. No one talked. Brett finally broke it by setting the dresser down, gently, like it might bite him. Connor stood frozen for a second before slinking inside with the fishing rods and hanging my coats back up. Wrong hooks. I didn't fix them. Elaine wiped down the kitchen counter with a dry paper towel, like she could scrub away the fact they'd ever been there. She still didn't look at me. Avery made them hand over the locksmith invoice. They'd scheduled it for Friday afternoon. He made them return the backup POS key Sierra had slipped to Gordon, just in case. She hadn't told me about that. Now I knew. Nobody said goodbye. Brett closed the back of the box truck without slamming it. Connor didn't make eye contact. Elaine gave me a polite nod that felt like 1,000 unsaid insults. Gordon was the last out. He stood in the doorway like he wanted one last word, but there was nothing left to say. I didn't give him the dignity of a stare. He turned and walked down the steps. The front door clicked shut behind them. Avery packed the folder back into his bag and turned to me. "That's what pushing with paper looks like." I nodded once. My throat felt tight. And for the first time in weeks, I breathed like I had the space to do it. After they drove off, Avery didn't waste a minute. He went back to his car, opened his laptop, and filed the notice of trespass along with a formal demand for return of all personal property removed from the house. He included still frames from my video, with timestamps. He CC'd the Merritt's family lawyer, a guy named Presley with a soft chin, and the kind of headshot that says, "Just let this be over." I stayed home while the documents flew, changed the locks again, this time with a locksmith I knew from Ruben's side jobs. Digital keypad, new deadbolts, smart camera at the door. Caleb from next door stood on his porch, arms crossed, watching me screw in the plate. He gave me a little thumbs up before heading back inside. Neighborhood justice doesn't clap, it nods. At the bakery, Marta was waiting for me before sunup. She had a spiral notebook and a hard look in her eye. "I can keep this place steady," she said, no hesitation. "But we've got a leak." Sierra's been skimming paper credits, not huge but steady. Adds up. We pulled the drawer reports from the past month, matched them against the POS. Same handwriting kept showing up under the adjustments column. Sierra's. Extra cash entries. Inventory tweaks. Vendor discounts that never made it to the bank. My jaw locked up. Paige had seen it coming and warned me, and I still let it slide. I didn't take Sierra out to the alley like I wanted to. I sat her in the office, shut the door, put Avery on speaker. We showed her the numbers. Showed her the screenshots of her and Elaine texting about keeping the brand in the family. Showed her the extra key we recovered from Gordon, the one she gave him without asking. Sierra blinked hard. Started with the tears, like that would change anything. Then she shifted into anger. "I was trying to help everyone transition," she said, like it was a job title. Avery didn't miss a beat. "Here's what happens next," he said. "You resign today, sign a repayment agreement for $3,400 over 6 months, or we file a theft report and hand this to a detective." She picked up the pen, signed the agreement, walked out with her purse and a box of odds and ends, never once looked back. Avery sent Gordon one more letter, final demand to release any lingering claims tied to the so-called investment. He attached a copy of every transfer, $28,000 principal, $1,600 in agreed interest, plus a draft complaint and a clear message. We were ready to file. Presley called back 20 minutes later. "We won't be contesting," he said. "They'd like to resolve it quietly." I told Avery to hold his line. No press, no drama, no phone calls. Just the releases, signed and final. And to stop using the word "like." Nothing about this was a request. It was done. Then I sat down with Marta, asked her point blank, "You want to buy it?" She didn't answer right away. She looked around the kitchen, touched one of the stand mixers like it still had a heartbeat. "If we can be fair about it," she said, "yes. I want it." We set a price, $186,000, 18 down, 5-year note. Avery wrote it up in 1 week flat. The rebrand followed, Harbor and Hearth by Marta. Paige's name gone, but not her stamp. That was her call, spelled out in her letter. Her way of handing it forward without leaving it behind. I brought home the original whisk. Set it on our mantel next to her framed photo. The light from the window hit both every morning around 8:30. The Merritts didn't say a word. Not to me, not publicly, but their circle heard. Because circles always do. The same ones who once bragged about Gordon's family legacy stopped talking. No more barbecues with proud toasts, just quiet faces and awkward grocery store sightings. A week later, I got a letter from Gordon. 4 lines. 1 sentence of forced condolences. 3 lines confirming he released all claims. No apology. He didn't need to say it. The release was the apology. His silence was the bow on top. Paige told me not to shout, not to take swings, just to hold the line and push with paper. And that's what I did. I signed, I filed. I moved the ball down the field 1 yard at a time. No noise, no flames, just forward. I kept the house because it creaks like her laugh, low and sudden, especially when you walk past the pantry after midnight. I kept the maple out front because she named it red for no good reason, except that its leaves burned brighter than anything else on sycamore in the fall. I kept the whisk on the mantel, the one with the bent wire, and the letter in the Ziploc under the coffee beans. It's still there. Sometimes I take it out just to feel the weight of it, still heavier than it looks. I sold the bakery to Marta because Paige told me to, and because she was right. I can run a press. I can sort paper trails and accounts and repair receipts. But dough? Dough needs someone who can feel it change from too wet to just right in a single turn of the wrist. Marta's that kind of person. Paige saw it. I trusted her eyes more than my own. First year's payments came in, and I sent $12.5 to the Raleigh Community Culinary School in Paige's name. Didn't make a post. Didn't tell anyone outside Avery. I'm not a plaque guy. Paige wasn't either. I filed the police report the same day Gordon's truck backed into my driveway like it was part of the landscaping. Not because I wanted charges, because I wanted a record. I wanted it on paper. Presley got the message. So did his clients. No more trucks showed up. Sierra made her payments on time, all 6 months of them. Then she moved to Charlotte, where she started selling commercial espresso machines. Or so Marta said. I never checked. I didn't tell Marta who to hire to replace her. I just told her to work the drawer herself every night for a month, and when she stopped feeling paranoid, that's when she'd know she hired the right person. The Merritts stayed quiet. No calls on Thanksgiving, no drive-bys, no surprise visits to check on the brand. I saw Gordon once, 2 years later, in the lumber aisle at Lowe's. He was looking at plywood. I was buying caulk. We didn't speak. He saw me. I know he did. He looked at the floor and walked the other way. That was enough. That North Carolina law wasn't the villain, and it wasn't the savior. It was just rules. Same as a playbook. Same as a manual. The Merritts counted on tradition. Paige knew how the system worked. She studied it. And she made sure I understood it too, page by page, clause by clause. I was 39 when I watched them carry my dresser onto the porch like it was community property, like I was renting space in my own life. I stood there and didn't raise a fist. I wanted to. My palms were itching. But I was old enough to know better. Paige taught me that paper holds more weight than rage when it's written right. And she wrote it right. I'm 58 now. Still work the presses 2 or 3 days a week. Helps keep the noise down in my head. On Sundays, I sit on that porch with coffee and a thermos and stare out at red. Sometimes I swear I can hear the bakery's oven fan from here, even though it's been Marta's for years now. I think about the way Paige ran a line, like it was a military unit dressed in flour and rolling pins, like every person mattered. People ask me sometimes how I didn't blow up, how I didn't swing or snap or torch the whole damn thing. Truth is, I wanted to, every day for a while. But I promised Paige I'd push with paper, not my voice. And the way they folded, quiet, cornered, one release form at a time, was its own kind of justice. What would you have done if you were in Derek's shoes? Confront them loud or let the documents talk? Tell me in the comments. And if this story hit you, hit that like button and subscribe for more.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.